recording. Here we go. But we're going to keep a transcript of who's here with us today. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that information. And I know when I attend a webinar, I like to see like where are people coming in from. A lot of times we have a lot of love from Maine showing up, which we appreciate that so much. And our next webinar, which I'll talk about at the end of this time, is actually going to feature a principal in Maine who's been using our framework and the work of the regulated classroom to transform himself and his school. So it's a pretty exciting thing. But Maine has been deep in this work with the regulated classroom now for more than a year and a half, and it's statewide. Most staff members across the state have had some exposure or been trained in the framework. So it's very exciting, cutting edge work. We are actively engaging in a research project with Johns Hopkins University to study the impacts of that statewide project that we've been doing with the Department of Education in Maine. So stay tuned for more details on that. Okay, let's get to it. Let's just get to it. Here's a question for you. I would so appreciate if you would drop your responses in the chat, and then I'll stop sharing just so we can see each other. Here's my question for you. When we experience someone frequently misbehaving, and this can either be a child, because I think we often think about misbehavior as being with kids and teens, children and teens, but adults misbehave too. But when we see someone misbehaving, what do we typically assume? Okay, and this I'm looking for you to lean on your training. I don't want anybody trying to show off with their little nervous system perspective. I'm actually looking for what is the traditional paradigm that most of us have been trained in and use to kind of try to understand what is going on with someone who's misbehaving. So I'm going to just drop into here. Oh, see, I love you guys already. Oh my gosh, I love it so much because wait till you see the next slide. So we're just going to start back here with, let's see, somebody said here it is. Twala, you said it's intentional. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Ashley, love it. They're doing it on purpose, right? Like they're totally intentionally, willfully trying to not make my day. They don't have appropriate coping strategies. Gina, like as a former school counselor who taught coping skills for years, 100%. Love that response. Brenda, where are you at? You're my girl right now because they want attention, right? Isn't that like the refrain that we said often or do say often in schools, which is when kids are acting out, we're either like, yeah, they're just looking for attention, or they just want to avoid what they don't want to have to deal with, right? So those are the common things. They're trying to communicate. Yes, Michelle, hear that one frequently as well. That all behavior is communication. And Lara said, get their needs met. So these are really fabulous. You already are like intuiting what it is that I want to talk about and I want to challenge. So I want you, through the course of this time with me today, to really try to be alive in what comes up for you as we talk about this stuff, okay? Because for many of us, these are deeply held beliefs that we have, right? We've been raised and indoctrinated in some of these things that folks have already mentioned, and we hold fast to them. So even though newer understanding is coming in, newer science is being presented, and personally, it like makes sense to me, right? A lot of what I learned through this newer science, we still are just like so tied to this old way of thinking about things, and it's hard for us to let it go. So as we talk about this stuff, I really want you to be paying attention to how it makes you feel on the inside when I challenge. I'm going to do that today. I'm going to be directly challenging a lot of these common assumptions about behavior. Okay. And I just want to say, as a disclaimer, I'm not trying to piss anybody off. Okay. In fact, I'd love for you all to be my friends. I'm not looking to anger or agitate anyone. I'm going to share with you the perspective that is held within the regulated classroom framework, because if it's going to be a fit for you and or your school, these assumptions would be assumptions that you would have to determine like work, like they make sense for you. They help you make meaning in your world. They help you think differently about struggles with and challenges with behavior. Okay, I'm going to go back. You guys ready now? I'd love for you to take your fingers and I'd love for you to, on your desk, table, give me a drum roll, please, because I can't wait to show you this. Okay. Everybody in the office today too has heard me like refining my slides and they're like, and I kept saying, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So give me a thumbs up if you see the little boy again in that slide. Okay, where I'm supposed to be. Here we go. Here we go. By the way, I'm totally going to share all these slides with you at the end, and there's some really good meaty stuff in here. Personally, I think that I've made some of the best slides of my career today. So if you want to totally rip them off and use them, you go for it, especially if you keep the Regulated Classroom logo on them. Okay, so this is a reflection of my training, like these common assumptions that I'm sharing here. This is a reflection of my training and how I operated for many years as a school counselor, first and foremost. And I'd love for you to give me a thumbs up if at some point in time, or even currently, this is something you've assumed too about bad behavior, is that it's willful and intentional. Some folks, how many folks have felt that way in the past, right? Or maybe even currently. How about this one? It reflects a lack of training at home. Oh my gosh, right? Right? I started my career inner city Wilmington, Delaware, and we were all running around being like, oh my God, these kids, like, oh my God. Stems from a skills deficit. I will not name any names about big names in the fields of psychology and social emotional learning and that sort of thing who still reiterate this, that like kids act poorly or act badly, of course this is in air quotes, because they lack skills and they have a skill deficit. I want to hit the pause button on that for a moment. How many people are starting to notice a little arousal arising on the inside of the body? Just a little like warning that that is your nervous system activating as I'm beginning to actively challenge what you believe or what you have believed, okay? Number 4, can be corrected through the right set of consequences. I forgot the term set of, okay? Can be corrected through the right set of consequences. And that can include positive or negative consequences. So that can include positive reinforcement like trinkets and tokens and praise and reward. And it can also include things like coercive consequences like punishment and harshness and physical, corporal punishment. So anybody give me a thumbs up on that? Anything? What's stirring now in your nervous system? In fact, I'd like to hold the pause button on that because this is why I believe we have had such a hard time moving away from this particular set of beliefs about bad behavior because it is defense mobilizing when we start to look at and then we're going to deeply challenge some of this stuff. So I'm wondering what's coming up for folks in their nervous system. Oh gosh, Molly. Oh, I mean, Holly. Holly said, okay, Holly, I'm not going to even say, sorry, that was a direct private message. I won't say that one out loud. Kayla, great to see you. Kayla, I love that you're always on here. Yeah, I'm just wondering now, I'm looking, somebody said overwhelmed. Oh, it was Holly. Thank you, Holly, that you're noticing that maybe you're feeling overwhelmed as we start to talk about this. But how about any others? Anybody else noticing? And you can drop it right into the chat. Noticing what's coming up for them in their own body experience as we begin this conversation. Defensive. Ashley, right there. Ashley, can we give Ashley a little of this? Okay, because she's noticing it, all right? And this is part of the change work that is about us. The regulated classroom is a framework that is not student first. It's adult first. Okay, it's focused on you and your experience in your work, right? That makes it very different than a lot of other things that you're going to come across that are related to social emotional capacities. The last, but certainly not least, is something folks already mentioned, which is a mantra that I used to use constantly, which is that everything that a child was doing that they should not have been doing was about either getting attention or trying to avoid something that was undesirable. So right here, how many people believe that, have believed that, all that stuff. Okay, good. Before we actually, I'm going to stop sharing because I want to see y'all. I want to see your faces. We're going to play a little Simon Says right now. So if you can, I would love for you to stand. If you can't, that's okay. You can stay seated, but this will be much better and much easier if you could stand with me. All right. If I say Simon says, and then I do something like Simon says, put your hands on your head, you're to put your hands on your head. If I say put your hands on your head, but I didn't say Simon says first, you got to sit down. Okay. You're out. So I can just see a few of you here. Simon says, put your hands on your head. Simon says, put your hands on your chest. Simon says, put your hand on your belly. Simon says, shake your hands like this. Put your hands on your nose. Oh, you guys are good. Put your hands on your mouth. Oh, I still didn't get anybody. Okay, ready? Rapid succession. Simon says, put your hands on your shoulders. Simon says, put your hands on your head. Simon says, put your hands on your nose. Put your hands on your eyes. Still nobody? Okay, fine, fine, fine. All right, moving back to what we were doing, just inserting a little microdose of play there to get you maybe back online, to perhaps help you even out the mobilization you're feeling in your body. We'll talk about this in a moment. Okay, here we go. This is the slide that honestly in graduate school, I would have gotten an F minus for, but because you never put this much text on a slide, but it felt meaningful to have to do that this time and to be able to do that. Can you all see the slide? I just want to make sure you can see it. Give me a thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you very much. Let's start with assumption number 1. Behavior is willful and intentional. In a polyvagal state regulation perspective, maybe it's willful and intentional. Because even Dr. Peter Levine says the vast majority of behavior stems from procedural memory. There is very little that you do during the course of your day that has you going, what do I do next here? Do I open the car door to get in? And then do I like put my hands on the steering wheel? Like, how do I drive this car? How do I put it into reverse? Frankly, you can drive all the way to work and have no clue even how you got there because it's procedural memory that is driving that behavior. All right. One of the things that Porges says is that a lot of our behavior is reflexive, meaning it's within the body, it's implicit. And this is especially true if we are at all in a protective state. Now, I recognize that I'm going to probably use some language right now that some of you may or may not be familiar with. Bear with me, please. Okay. I'm going to be talking about things like nervous state, nervous system states. I'm going to be saying things like protective state versus connecting state. So just hang in there with me and then I'll help you to unpack some of that. Number 2, bad behavior reflects a lack of training at home, right? This is something a lot of us say or offer as a reason why our kids are the way they are today. Here's the reframe on that from a interpersonal neurobiology perspective, from an attachment theory perspective. Most kids coming through the door, not all, because there's things like neurodivergence and that sort of thing and other things going on, but by and large, children reflect the state that their primary caregiver often had in their presence. So what do I mean by that? Kids who come in ready to learn, available for learning, are reflecting that they had parents who were able to co-regulate with them often, not just parents, could be other caregivers, could be an early childhood provider. Somebody was loving, nurturing, patient, but capable of being ventral, capable of actually experiencing a lot of regulation so that they could, in a moment of distress with a child, they could co-regulate with that kid and help that child come back to a state of regulation again. Okay, so it's not so much like the kind of training that I think a lot of us think of, like you do this and you don't do that. You certainly can shape behavior in that way, but what is the best, most health edifying way to help a child be more regulated and be more pro-social is to be able to be a regulated presence for that child, to be a safe, attuned presence for that kid. Okay, so that is what you're seeing. You're seeing the patterns of regulation when you see a child who's coming in and acting oftentimes socially appropriate and available for learning. Number 3, bad behavior stems from a skills deficit. Okay, friends, now I know this one, like, whew, I'd like you to take a minute for a second. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing for a second because we're like moving halfway through. This stuff is deep, deep. I would love for you to shake with me for a moment. Let's get that nervous system reorganized. Shaking, vigorously is one of the fastest ways to help you get regulated in a moment. Okay. So just doing that. Going back to the thymus thumping, just trying to help you really experience the power of microdosing in opportunities to regulate and or co-regulate. Because even as we're doing this together, we're all being able to see us doing it together, which helps us to feel less alone with whatever we're experiencing. And some of you might be out there going, she cray cray. I don't even know what she's talking about. I am fine. Can we move on? And that's okay too. It may mean you're kind of dorsal, kind of dissociated, kind of disconnected, or you're just fine. You're regulated enough and you're ready to move on. All of it is good. You're not going to induce harm or cause harm by taking a moment, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, to help you and or your students get more regulated. All right, here we go. I'm going back to the share. Not sure why every single time I do that does, anyways, doesn't matter. Okay, moving on. As a school counselor of many years and the guidance counselor who delivered guidance lessons, I was all about teaching this coping skills, like all about it. That was my whole job, right? So I would host individual counseling sessions with students, small groups with students, teach coping in classroom lessons, things like mindfulness and deep breathing and how to resolve conflict and how to share, like all kinds of pro-social behaviors. And the thing that always struck me was that no matter how much I worked with a student or how long, sometimes for years, I often noticed that when a child needed that coping skill most, they were not able to access it. And I was like, what? Like for real? Like you're killing me, Smalls, because they would do something reactive that would get them in trouble inevitably in the classroom, right? Something defensive, something reactive, something, um, upsetting. And I would have that conversation with them like, dude, why didn't you use your breathing in that moment or go for a walk or get a drink of water? Like, seriously, how many times have we said these things to them, to students? How many times have we handed out coping skills lists? Those are the ones that are always the best, right? You have a whole list of all the things you can do to cope with something that's stressful, as though it were something you could just select off of a menu. Like, yep, I'll be doing mindfulness now to manage my feelings, right? In a polyvagal perspective and in a developmental perspective, prosocial behavior spontaneously occurs when we are experiencing a ventral vagal state. Again, I know I'm throwing words at you that you're like, what are you talking about? Okay. Guys, this one's a game changer. At least it was for me as somebody who was all about social emotional learning way before anybody even knew SEL was a thing, right? Like I was a Daniel Goleman emotional intelligence like fangirl way back before that was even like a thing back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so I was deeply interested in how do we help people be more civil with one another? How do we help kids have more success in schools, right? Like I wanted to know that. And so I did a lot of training and a lot of work in very cognitive ways of trying to teach these things. And then I met polyvagal theory and I was like, bam, oh my goodness, light bulb moment. Right, right. The reason why he couldn't go for a walk, get a drink of water, or do his breathing exercises was because he got triggered. And when he got triggered in that moment, he reacted. He didn't respond, he reacted, and it was reflexive. Okay. That's like, mm, I don't know if other people feel that way, but that's like a major game changer, right? Major game changer. Okay, just because I'm realizing, wow, I haven't even gotten through all my slides and like, I'm like so loving this. This should have been an hour long webinar. Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, next one. Bad behavior can be corrected through the right consequences. All right, this is where I'm really like gonna have people being fisticuffs with me. Like they're not gonna be happy with me saying these things. But here's what I want to say about that before I even dig into this for a second. I'm not saying that you have to throw out everything that you've been doing. What I'm saying is this perspective and these are a set of assumptions that I'm offering you and that are embedded in the regulated classroom framework gives us like such a more, in my opinion, hopeful and inspired way to rethink and then act differently as a result of the challenges that we face with students. So I want to say that. Okay. But what we do know is that aversive and coercive forms of consequences, like I mentioned earlier, they can reshape behavior. I would actually make the argument that they can train a dorsal state into an individual. So, what does that mean? If you are abusive enough to an individual, especially with physical violence, you can train that individual to be compliant with you or to you or for you, but it's not without consequence. It's not without consequence. Okay. Meaning it's not without consequence to their mental and physical well being. All right. So, I mean, Hitler is a living example of that. He got a whole country through the means of coercive, right, abusive leadership to get an entire country to comply with horrific behavior. How do you do that? Because coercion is a very powerful form of, especially if the coercion involves, bodily harm and or death. So push comes to shove, as humans, we're going to survive. So we can go dorsal and become compliant in the face of that. In terms of positive consequences, meaning consequences I know is connoted with always being negative, but that's not really true. But in terms of rewarding and praising and that kind of thing, all you need to do is have a dog that, like mine over there, who's sleeping right now, to know that, who's like so beloved, it's like she's a human child. That if we're outside like we were earlier today, and there's a compost pile where people have thrown their scraps of good food, like apples and breadcrumbs and all that kind of stuff in there, and I'm holding a treat over here and saying, Maple, come to me, Maple. She's like, peace, Mom. I'm going for the compost pile all day long, right? So it's limited. The power of that kind of consequence is limited in reshaping behavior. Last but not least, it's about getting attention or avoiding something undesirable. Even when I used to say these words, even when I operated from this perspective, it didn't feel right on the inside. Why? Because even seeing behavior through these lenses makes it so that it implies that the behavior is willful and intentional and manipulative. It is natural and normal for our kids, for our babies, for our young children, for our teens to want connection. If they are seeking attention, they are seeking connection. There is nothing wrong with that. And given the incredible social isolation that we have in our culture and our many of our school communities, well, just for our young in general today, it's very likely that we're going to see a lot more attention-seeking behavior because they're dying, they're desperate for social connection. And kids are drawn to experiences that are stimulating, that are active, that are engaging and relevant. I'm sorry, friends, but if you're like me and you've raised children and they've gone to public school and you've been a public educator and you're married to one too, you know that many days your kids come home from school and the number one thing they say when you say, how was school, is boring, right? Like most common response from students today. I don't care if they're in second grade or if they're in 12th grade. Number one thing is boring. So we've got to change things in that way, right? So that our kids feel
That's
like
an
it's
attitude.
relevant. All right, I'm going to stop sharing
You
for a
don't live in
second
the big
here.
movie, girlfriend. You're like, I
Just
don't
unmuted
really go
themselves.
nowhere.
Okay, here we go. Got it. Found it. There we go. Okay. It's 3:57. And so here's what I want to do, because we're going to finish at 4 o'clock in terms of sharing content, but I have a couple more things I want to share with you. And then I'm happy to stay on for a few more extra minutes if folks have questions or they want to talk further. But I just want to honor that I said, that this would be approximately half an hour. And so folks could join me for that amount of time. All right, so I'm going to share here. Going to go back to that real quick. And I just want to share a um, couple more slides that I have here. There are, from a nervous system perspective, there are three primary states. And if you start looking at behavior through this lens, as opposed to through a deficit lens or a pathological lens, like, oh, this kid must have ADHD, or this kid must be neurodivergent, or this kid must be autistic, or this kid must be this or that. And so we're labeling, right? But if you actually kind of step back and instead looked at it through these primary states of the nervous system, and of course, this is according to polyvagal theory, you got three primary states: ventral vagal, which is ventral vagal man in the middle, right? This is when we're feeling good, we're experiencing felt safety, we're maybe moving our bodies with some regularity, we're getting some sensory input, like life is good, right? But then inevitably something happens for that child or for you, and you get triggered. And when you get triggered, you go into a protective state. And that looks like two different things. That can either be fight flight, which is higher arousal or heightened arousal, or you can go dorsal. Some of you out there, when I look at you, I know you're dorsal. That's not a bad thing. That's not a criticism. It's just you disconnect, you distance from the moment in time. Okay. And so these are very protective states. They are adaptive and they serve us because as human beings, we crush surviving. These protective states are the primary reasons we've done so well surviving as a species. Okay. But what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to find ways to ventral, to be able to fluidly shift into a ventral state when we get triggered. Because inevitably, friends, we're going to get triggered and it's going to happen multiple times a day. Sometimes there's small, subtle triggers. Sometimes you don't even know that that you got triggered, but you can feel it in your body. All right, I had more going here, but I'm just gonna, because we're like pretty much out of time. The framework that I've developed is rooted in a nervous system perspective. Nervous system perspective. If you like nerding out about this, or I've said some things today that got you curious, these are just a few of the many resources. I should have put them all around my table and hung them up, but that you could start reading or you could start looking at folks like Robin Goebel and Dr. Bruce Perry and Dr. Mona Delahooke and Dr. Stephen Porges. Like, this is just a little sample of people who are talking about this nervous system state perspective and challenging all those old things and old ways that we used to see, how we used to see human development and human behavior. And so I'm inviting you to come get on board because this is a movement, right? This is a movement that's rooted in the science. I was playing with QR codes today, and so this is one of the QR codes I had, which is that you can put your phone up to that, and it'll bring you to the link of the guidebook, which we're doing a discount today of 15%. You can share this discount. It'll be good for a week. But if you're interested in learning more about what this is all about, and in particular, how it is relevant for you, the adult, first and foremost, I'd love for you to check the guidebook out. With that, and Sarah Nelson, you're going to love this. I don't even know if you know this news yet, but I know you see that man on the left-hand side, Chris Hallett, and Chris is going to be joining me for my next webinar, which is the link to that to get registered for that next webinar, which is what has been a principal's journey with regulated classroom and how it's literally, according to him, transformed everything. He was super burned out. He was super disillusioned. He didn't want to go back to his job. He was going to resign. He'd been a principal for 14 years, and encountering this framework and then bringing it back to his school has changed everything for him. So the next time that we're getting together on April 16th, Chris is going to be joining me, and he's going to be talking about his experience of the regulated classroom and this nervous system perspective and why it's been such a game changer for him in his school. So the first 5 people to register for that webinar are going to get a guidebook for free. So there's another way to get it too. So if you want, you can click on the QR code, register now, and you might be one of the first 5. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. I used QR codes, guys. I figured out how to do QR codes today. I so don't feel 50 anymore. All right, I'm going to check. If people have to go, just give me a wave goodbye because I'll wave back at you. Like, I totally get that. And we'll have the recording and we'll send out the slide deck. So you'll be able to kind of come back and listen more or look at the resources, and some of the other slides that I didn't get a chance to get through. Bye, Sarah. Bye. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Mindy, right, Mindy? She said, thank you. That's like why trying to understand why they can't use what they know. Oh my gosh, Mindy, I don't know where you are in my thing, but like I want to have this conversation with you. I cannot begin to tell you how much this was such a game changer for me. Like it really, really was. Um, Let's see. Adia said Raising Kids is an excellent book. Yes, it is. Robin Goebel, she is fantastic. She has a ton of free resources. Check her out on her website or on social media. She's really amazing. And she has a fabulous podcast called Raising Kids with Big Baffling Behaviors, where she unpacks a lot of what I'm talking about here. So she's a great resource. Um, yeah, okay. Anybody else? Questions? Anybody who wants to unmute themselves and ask like a live question? Imagine that. We'll give you some radical acceptance if you do. Sarah, go for
Hi.
it. Sarah, tell us who you are and where you're from. Thank you so
So my
much
name is
for
Sarah
your
Cuddy.
courage.
Yeah, and I'm a learning assistant coordinator. So
Where are you at?
um, I'm in Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada.
Oh,
So
coming to
I'm
Fort
way up north.
McMurray. I'm going to see
Yeah.
you guys in May. Yay. I can't wait.
Oh, really? I
Yeah, I'm
didn't
coming
know.
there to do a training. Yep. With the Catholic
Oh,
division.
I'm so excited. Anyway, regardless, I'm wondering if there and this all makes a lot of sense to me, and I always did wonder, we're teaching our students or our personal children the coping strategies that they need, but they're not able to access them because their lids flipped or for whatever reason.
Yes.
I wonder if there's any research on ASD and polyvagal theory
So I love this
and the
question.
connection.
I love
Yeah.
this question. So want you all to know this. So she's saying autism spectrum disorders. What's the relationship or the research? So I want to tell you this quick little story. Dr. Stephen Porges, who developed polyvagal theory, when his firstborn son went to go to school, I think they lived in like outside of DC area. Um, he was, I don't know if he identified him as on the spectrum, but the school did or somebody did. And he was shocked about how the schools knew nothing. This is, to me, this is hilarious because this is literally back in like the 90s, early 2000s. But the schools knew nothing about nervous systems and how they function and their relationship to behavior. And so that actually set him on the journey of really wanting to dig deep into what is going on from a physiological perspective. And one of the things that he says about autism spectrum disorders is that it has to do with the realm of social engagement being essentially depressed. And I don't mean that as a psychological state, I mean that as like it's turned off. Okay. And when you have flat affect, when you are not able to reciprocate other people's facial expressions, eye contact, that kind of thing, it doesn't signal the realm of social engagement to turn on. So one of the things that he has done, he's done it. So the short answer to your question is yes. He's done extensive research on this. He's developed actual interventions that work on the auditory listening system. That is one of the primary ways that we can turn on or turn off our protective or defensive states is through our auditory sensory system. And so he has deeply, in fact, hold on a second. I just want to grab this so I can show this to you. I should have brought this out before. If you want to nerd out hardcore and you want to read the writings that are related to this, you want to get Polyvagal Safety, which is one of his books published by Norton. Talks a lot of it talks exactly about that question. So when people wonder, like, well, does this is this applicable for neurodivergence? The answer is yeah. He's done a lot of research in that area.
I guess my question was not yeah, that. Thank you for that. It clearly is connected, like as someone who works and has personal connections with many people with ASD, all on the spectrum, different levels. I was just wondering how that could help us learn to better regulate our little ones with ASD. Anyway, I'll
So
pass along
Sarah,
that thought.
it's a really good question, and I would be stepping out on a ledge to say this, but a lot of the research that I've been doing in the way, so I'm developing another resource is going to be for birth to age 5. But one of the things that I've been doing in that research and preparation for that resource is really looking at developmental experiences, looking more deeply at developmental experiences that give rise to what Steve Porges would call a sociality. And one of the things that we know is there's just a number of things that is affecting the development of our kids that I think is related to the striking increase. But also what you're going to get with the regulated classroom is these essential and yet missing developmental experiences. They're just embedded in the four core practices because the practices are rooted first and foremost in play. So you got connectors or play based. Then you've got activators that are collective rhythm making. So just those two of the four core practices represent critical, essential developmental experiences that are missing in their sufficiency and frequency. So I would argue that a lot of us are trying to even still program for students in the aftermath of how students present, as opposed to dosing in a preventative way, a lot of this through the course of regular instruction or through the course of a regular day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Anybody else who's brave enough to unmute themselves and ask a question? Okay, let me see if I can scroll through and okay, I think you guys hear me.
I do have a question.
Great. Okay, let me see if I can find you. Where are you? Mindy?
Yeah.
Yay, Mindy, hit it.
Yeah.
I'd like your
So,
response already, Mindy.
well, I agree that you know, these kids are seeking connection. I guess as a classroom teacher, when I have a student who, whatever the trigger may be, today it was somebody moving a child's water bottle because it was in that other child's assigned seat. So he just moved it to because the child who had the water bottle in the wrong seat was busy serving pizza for our lunch. So anyway, so that started a huge temper tantrum, I guess, for lack of a better word, and a stomp off to a corner and sobbing over that. And it's like, so what do you do? How do you, and you know, there's no consoling at that point.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
In fact, so a couple things I want to say. Number one, I love your question. Totally appreciate it. Thank you for it. Tell me where you're from.
Montessori Children's House in Lansing, Michigan.
Oh, yay. Love that. Love that. Thank you. Okay. So, and I'm sure you and I could talk a lot about how you're seeing, if you've been doing this for a while, like, I'm sure we could talk a lot about how kids are different today than they once were. But so, couple different things. One is that when students do kind of blow up, when they do blow up, one of the biggest misconceptions that we have is that we have to help them calm down. Now you're gonna be like, well, what else would we do? What I mean by that is how we go about calming them down, right? So a lot of times they've gotten a surge in the body of a lot of cortisol and adrenaline coursing through, and they need a way in which to get those hormones and the mobilization that's gone out to the body reorganized. So they need actually opportunities to be oftentimes active to help them reorganize. They're not going to do, it's not, they're not going to get reorganized by being stationary and doing something calming in that moment. That's more like in the recovery period of things. But are you familiar with the regulated classroom? Have you used this yet?
I'm not familiar with that book. I've done, you know, the social emotional learning. A lot of it sounds a little bit old school, but I mean, we do try to do movement. It's and getting the child. Um, I have, you know, I would call it kind of withdrawal at that point. You know, slinking off to a corner. Or I have a few. I've got several who just have a hard time regulating, and at any given moment, a misplaced pencil may set somebody off. And it's getting them to agree to.
I want to just show you something, and I hope everybody else will just indulge me for a second on this so I could just show you a graphic that might be helpful in trying to explain what I'm going to explain here. So what you're describing, and how old are your kids?
7 and 8 are the ones that are having the most difficulty right now. 7 and 8 year olds.
Okay. And sorry, this thing just did this to me. Cut it out. I'm trying to move you backwards. This is where I'm like, can you move? I'm trying to move the icon so I can reverse my slides. And it won't let me do that, of course. I won't bother. I don't want to hold you all too long. So sounds to me like some of the students are presenting a little bit younger than perhaps they are. You might get that kind of behavior more in a 3 and a 4-year-old, right? Where they just kind of lose it at the littlest thing. And the reality of it is that's exactly the developmental stage you're dealing with. You're not dealing with 7 and 8 year olds like maybe you were in the past. They literally have the nervous system calibration of a much younger child. And we could get into all the reasons why, and maybe in another webinar, we'll talk about the impacts of tech on the developing nervous system and screen time and all that kind of stuff. But we won't do that right now. But instead, what I want you to think about and what I was trying to show you is a graphic of the window of tolerance. You're describing children who should be able to talk. I don't even like the language of should be able to, but I think it used to be a reasonable expectation that children could tolerate those kinds of small moments in a way that wasn't so explosive. But they can no longer. And it's not that they could never, it's that they have a very narrow window of tolerance. The best ways to widen the body's window of tolerance is to be able to experience a lot of mobilization over and over and over again, primarily through forms of play and collective rhythm making, and then settling and calming down. So if you decide to try and check out the regulated classroom, first of all, I'm going to tell you right now, as somebody who used pretty much every SEL thing on the market for a lot of years, this is not like any of that because this is about your nervous system first and foremost. Okay. And working on widening your nervous system with your students through co-regulation. And so you're going to be using practices that bring you all up and then bring you all down together. All up, all down. Dosed in 30, 60, 90-second increments multiple times a day. Just like I stopped for a second and I said, okay, guys, give me some drum rolls or give me some of this or give me some, like I'm purposely dosing in just micro moments to help you get reset. That is what our kids are going to need a lot of. We need a lot of it because their dysregulation dysregulates us. And
Well,
so
I have to tell you,
go ahead.
sorry, it scares me because to get them wound up, some of them then have a really, really hard time coming back down. Like
Right.
if I ask them for a drum roll, I'm going to have kids jumping around and beating each other. Um,
And that,
so
Sarah Nelson, how many times have we heard teachers say that? Do you want to chime in there for a second? Sarah Nelson is the Department of Ed in Maine, who's been working with me for a couple years now. And
Mhm.
go ahead, Sarah.
Minnie, so I will tell you, I work with the Maine Department of Education as a student engagement specialist, but I came from a classroom of over 30 years experience. And I know when she first said that, I was like, what? But the truth is, when we talk about routine, consistency, felt safety, we talk about how can you set the stage so that you're going to be able to do that. And with practice and working with your classroom, I have to tell you, they enjoy it so much and it feels so good to be part of the community that they learn. I don't know if I even want to say learn. It is something that you kind of have to trust the process with it. Setting as a team, how do we want this to look? How do we want this to feel? What can we do to make this work really well for our team? So it's a little bit of that pre teaching, just like when you're doing any regular, ordinary routine in your classroom. It's the pre teaching to get it ready, but have the entire classroom be a part of that because then it becomes a connecting practice and everyone knows what makes it work.
Yeah. I
It
mean,
really does work.
it's one of those things where I know that Sarah's a classroom teacher, so she gets it. And she's also heard from that question that you have, Mindy, is a very common question that people have
Very common.
and a very common fear that people express. And what I can say is that when I actually train folks in the framework, we talk about this and we talk about dipping a toe in. You don't just start with like 5 minutes of everybody hand drum rolling, at the same time. You want to titration is the term that Dr. Peter Levine uses. You want to titrate into it and come out of it quickly so that you are most likely to gain success with it. And you want to start with practices that you love. It has to speak to your safety first and foremost. So if drum rolling to you just associates with like chaos and noise and like, that would not be a starting point for you as a practice within your classroom. But we can go a lot deeper on this, but this is actually really these start to be kind of training questions, although they are fabulous questions, and many of which are answered in the guidebook too. I'm just going to take, oh, Becky, Becky. Thank you, Becky. So Holly, thank you for your question. Yeah, I know. So this is the thing that's really important. I love what she's saying here. She said our admin was a little concerned about us using rhythm sticks with teens. Holly, where are you? Do you mind me telling me if you're still there? Okay, not sure if she's still there or not, but she said they thought potential weapon, but they didn't, and it worked. Oh, I don't know if she means like they ended up using them and it worked. All I can tell you is like I get it. As somebody who worked in I've worked in residential schools, I've worked in inner city schools, like you think about that kind of stuff. Plus, that's just our training. Like that's also our training to think from this place of like what could possibly go wrong. And it's also the thing that Dr. Peter Gray, who's a developmental psychologist and play researcher of 50 years, says is that the biggest problem that we have, and I get it, like I get it, we don't feel safe with things, and that's why we stop doing certain things, or that's why we don't want to play in class, or that's why we don't want to dance, or we don't want to make music, because it just all feels unsafe. The more that we constrain and restrict and constrain and restrict, the more that our kids are missing these experiences they need so badly. But it's about you finding what feels like that edge of growth for you. Like, okay, maybe the rhythm sticks that I have, which I don't have a pair right next to me right now, but maybe those feel a little scary. But I'm gonna tell you right now, I'd be surprised if you thought the ones they sell on Amazon feel scary, because some of the ones they sell are like these little tiny tubes. I mean, I mean, it would really take, you couldn't really hurt somebody with that. Like you might sting somebody with it, but it's not like you're going to kill somebody with the rhythm sticks they sell on Amazon. So I get it. And I go back to saying your starting point is the place of what you feel most comfortable and most safe with. So maybe rhythm sticks isn't it. But once you feel like you might get there, I can't tell you, rhythm sticks is a game changer in a classroom. Like they are just phenom, phenom. All right, great questions. I love the energy. I love the attention. Please share, share, share. Please share the discount code. Please share the webinar when you get it. Share, share, share. We want to be spreading this across the US. It's kind of happening anyways, but we are excited to have folks really interested in this perspective, interested in a new way of doing things. And we are here to support you in the very important work you accomplish with students every single day. So thank you and be well. Talk to you all next month, hopefully. Podcast.